Cool. So I don't need this, right? Everyone can hear me okay? Yeah. Sweet. Little disclaimer. Life has been really crazy for the past few weeks, so my slides are not as detailed as I want them to be. So what I think would be great tonight is we make this a little bit more conversational. You'll see a lot of bullet points. If you see a bullet point that looks interesting to you, raise your hand, ask questions. We can deep dive on topics, whether they're technical or not. So let's just make this a collaborative thing, and I think we'll get through it. Yeah? All right. So this talk is about a game that we made called Snapshot VR. The subtitle is Multiplayer is Hard. I really want to cover the two pieces of multiplayer that I think are particularly complicated. One is community management. How do you build and maintain an active community over time? I think that's a big piece if you want to have a successful multiplayer game. And the other piece is that I find that a lot of game devs are intimidated by the technology involved in building a multiplayer game, and it's really not that crazy. So I want to talk through some of the concepts there, some things to look out for that might help you get started if you want to play around with the networked game. Cool. So who are we? As John mentioned, we're sponsors of the Nashville Game Devs, and we're Giant Scan Industries, a legitimate tax-paying business in the state of Tennessee since 2017. Have not been audited yet, which is some sort of miracle based on the name. But it's working out for us so far. That's our logo. We've released 3 games. We released a VR rhythm game named Chop It in 2018. That was our first title. Snapshot, which we're talking about tonight, was released in 2020 and had a series of releases since then. And then Super Psycho Baseball is a non-VR game. What's the word for regular games these days? The game game. I don't know how to do that. It's our third partner that's not in Tanner. Built that one this past year.
What was the reason behind naming your company Giant Scan?
It's just really funny. Yep.
Top result on Google.
Yeah. All right, so our team, I'm Jesse Keogh. That's my avatar in Snapchat here. I'm the only person in the game that has the cowboy hat. Tanner Netterville, who's right here, he's going to be helping me out tonight. And he's the only player in the game to have, this is our character from Chop It, who he has a cosmetic for in Snapshot. And then Charlie is a co-founder of Giant Scan. He currently lives in Portland, Oregon. And then we use in-pal audio, like hopefully a lot of y'all do, for our sounds. So what is Snapshot? The VR esports shooter that feels like we're playing paintball in the future. I don't know how well my graphics are going to do on this projector, but imagine this is a really clear picture of like an arena environment, and then we have different shaped obstacles that you can arrange in different formations to make up the maps. It's inspired by actual paintball. That is a not embarrassing picture of me from college when I was playing in, I think that was at the college paintball national championships. I played for about 10 years pretty seriously. And some of that will play into our talk today on how you find the community that fits what you're building. Because I think our most engaged audience is probably paintball players. I think next is probably airsoft players and then just VR shooters people. Sounds about right, I think. Cool. The meat of the talk tonight is how we did this. So this is our monthly active users over time. And we've, partially intentionally, partially accidentally, found a way to have average growth in monthly active users over 3 years for a VR multiplayer game, which is certainly not the norm. Typically, this graph peaks somewhere in the first 3 months that you launch, and then it goes down within the 1 to 2 year mark when you move on to your next project or your players move on to the next good VR multiplayer game. So I'm really happy with this graph. I think this makes me and Tanner feel like we've done some good things with Snapshot. Any questions so far? Good.
Are you going to get into marketing and stuff like that? So you got a huge bump between
I'll explain.
November 2021.
I'll explain the bump. Yes.
Yeah. I want to know what you did. How did you get there?
Yeah. The quick version, this bump was more organic. This was more about like naturally finding our audience. This bump was one single event. And I can talk about that in a little bit. This is the first gameplay demo of Snapshot. This is a bunch of textured Unity objects and an insane locomotion system that I thought was really clever and ended up being a waste of time. But at least this version of it. We do still have a version of this called Puppet that tries to reduce VR motion sickness, where you never actually move the player's body. But not as crazy as this whole like teleport you up in the skybox thing. We got to this point in, I don't know, 3 days, something like that. And then 3 years later, it looks like this. So this is footage from the VRML, the VR Master League, is an esports league that has a Snapshot League within it. These are two teams playing in an esports match on Twitch, 4-on-4. You can see, essentially, like you have your two teams of 4. It's paintball inspired, so everyone starts from one spot and it goes to their obstacle. It's one-shot kills. It's a projectile shooter. There's a ref bot that runs around to make sure you're not cheating. And then we have like sponsors and like company friends and things like that advertised throughout the arena, so on and so forth. We'll get into some of the features that the game has in a little bit. Getting started. So we got to that first little demo video I showed you pretty quick, and about 3 weeks later, we had something that we could pitch. So we went to GDC in 2019, and we met a bunch of folks. We met with PlayStation, we met with HTC, Microsoft when they were doing their Windows MR stuff, and we ended up landing on a contract with HTC. So we did a 30-day exclusivity release with them on Viveport, which is their marketplace. And otherwise, we just made a bunch of great connections that we were able to utilize throughout the next few years. This was the first slide for our pitch deck. The game, as you may have noticed, doesn't quite look like that anymore. But when you're pitching a game, really, you just want to get the concept across. Show them that you have the talent to build it. And then, yeah, it can tend to work out from there.
So how did you set up the pitches? Did you just go to the conference and show up at places to pitch, or did you schedule that at home?
A little bit of each. So we found contacts, whether via like Twitter or just finding company emails or like through LinkedIn connections or whatever for a few companies. And then like for PlayStation, for example, I just walked up to their booth and I was like, I have a demo on this flash drive. Can I pitch a game to you? And they were like, come back at 3. And we did it that way. So I think both ways work. People are at GDC and these types of conferences to make these connections. So never be afraid to go up to a booth and just be like, you guys have 15 minutes for me. Yeah. Cool. We did closed alpha and closed beta as part of getting the game ready for launch. They actually lasted quite a while, 6 months or more. Alpha, very, very limited feature set. This was like when things were barely working, but we found some of those early adopters that were really interested in the idea. Some of those have stuck with us the whole time. Like one of our moderators joined in the alpha and has been a mod for 3 years, which is crazy. Closed beta is when we had built out some more of the architecture, how we get it running a little bit more smoothly. Then we were looking at maybe like 100 players in the beta, something like that. And that was to kind of polish and prove out the bugs. And then we were ready. You're never really ready for launch. We were ready enough for launch. So as I mentioned, we did a 30-day exclusivity on Viveport. That is pretty common. So especially in hardware-focused marketplaces like VR, there's a lot of competition for content. So if you're building a VR game, I think your chances are a little bit higher of finding one of these marketplaces that's willing to throw you some cash or resources in one way or another for either content rights or some exclusivity period. So we did 30 days exclusive on Viveport. And then we fulfilled our contract at that point. We were able to go on Steam. about a month later. So we'll get into this. Our graphs don't even show the Vive port sales because they're so insignificant compared to Steam and other marketplaces. Nothing against Vive port, it wasn't the right home for us. But the resources that they gave us were very helpful through development. So I'm still glad we took the deal. Cool. Good. Community management. Here's one of those bunch of bullet points slides where I'm like, please ask me about these if you want to learn more. Here's an example of one of our, I think, more successful marketing campaigns was instead of hitting the VR specific subreddits and Facebook groups and Twitter spheres, we went to like, who are the groups of people that might care about digital content like this because of their interests in real life? So the paintball subreddit and the paintball Facebook groups by far were the most traction we got in the early days. Like when we still had a very prototypey, not fully ready for everyone to play experience, we could start drumming up some interest in those groups because we were pretty confident that we built a thing that feels enough like paintball or airsoft or whatever, that they would be like, oh, that's really cool. Maybe now I'm interested in VR. Maybe I wasn't before. And it's way less competitive if you find a scene like that than if I go to like, the VR first-person shooter subreddit where you're competing with Onward and Pavlov and all the Milsim shooters and Echo, and there's just a lot more competition in that space than if you're saying like, I'm building something for this group, and so therefore I'm going to target that group. So yeah, Reddit, Facebook groups, Instagram. This was surprising. Instagram, in terms of socials between Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Instagram was where we got the most engagement. I would have expected it to be Twitter, but video games are very visual. Instagram's very good at images and videos and like advertising those to the right people. So we spent more of our time building like little clips for Instagram than really the other socials. And then we got really lucky, and if you you see the words volunteer here and here, if you can do that, that's the way to do it. We were just lucky to have a really good community that care a lot about the game. So Tanner and I have never had to be full-time social media managers. We've never had to be full-time Discord moderators because community members are willing to give their time to help with those pieces. And a lot of it is like they understand that if they can take some of that burden off, that's more time for me and Tanner to build bug fixes and new features and like the things that they actually care about. So that's not the norm, I don't think. But if you find yourself in that situation, then you should be like, I've built a really good community. That's kind of the socials pieces. Any questions before we talk about Discord?
Yeah. Social media managers like doing marketing on Instagram and stuff like that, or are they just kind of moderating it, responding to your games?
Yeah, so I think typically what you want, and we've had good ones and bad ones because they've all been volunteers, I think what you want is someone who's willing to keep an eye on the community and say like, oh, this player posted this screenshot or this cool like kill clip of them winning a match or something, and finding the right things to take and put on your official pages. So we have a Giant Scam official page on everything, and we have a Snapshot VR official page on everything, so we can promote all of our products and then like highlight the Snapshot stuff. So yeah, I think you're looking for people to like find content to use, to create new content, and then just to keep steady rhythm, one post a week or whatever works for your audience. Cool. And then Discord. Discord is, I think, the best place to put your energy if you're going to try to get a community built for your game, especially a multiplayer game. So we're at 4.5 thousand members in our Discord right now, still moderated by volunteers. And this was where really like the hard work was put in to build a long-standing community. It's really easy in the early days of multiplayer games to churn users because they see this game and they're like, that looks cool, I want to try that out. So they buy it and they launch the game, and there's no servers on, and there's no players on because maybe only 50 people have the game so far. Maybe you're not in the same time zone as them. So without having like one place for people to say like, hey, I'm part of this 50 people, let's play 8 tonight, then it can be really tough to organically gain users.
We had a Discord button in the main menu of the game. Like, so from the main game menu, take it back up.
That's right, yeah. So since we were launched on PC, yeah, we could embed a button in the main menu that just says open Discord, and that was just a link to our Discord invite. That would pop them in here. And a couple of things that worked well for us. One is we made a scheduled games channel, and we used a bot to once a week schedule a new match time. It'd be like Thursday at 8 p.m. or something like that. It was for a long time.
And there was another bot to convert it to everyone's time zone.
Yeah, a different bot, so people could be like 8 p.m. in my time zone. And then, so that actually worked well. We ran that for, I don't know, over a year. That was like the main way people were getting online every week for probably a year or more. And then as the community got bigger, we wanted to avoid people using the like @everyone or these like really big spammy tags. So we did an opt-in role in the Discord that says like, if I'm willing to be notified when people are playing the game, I'll join this role. And that way someone says, hey, I'm hopping on for 20 minutes, I'm gonna run a match. They can hit that role, everyone will get a notification on their phone, and they know to jump. So it's like a surprising amount of wrangling people is part of getting this game spun up.
Discord admin, I know.
Yeah, you get it. Yes. It's, I mean, a game developer's full-time job could be just doing Discord stuff. Like it's a whole thing. Worth your time, though, worth your energy. It goes a long way. A couple other things we did. We ran some in-house tournaments in the first year with some really simple prizes like t-shirts and stickers and things like that. And that gave people like something to look forward to, something to practice for. You got people organizing themselves into teams and things like that. And once we've proven out one or two of those, we got in contact with VR Master League, which is one of the premier esports leagues in VR. They support leagues for like Onward and Pavlov and some other competitive VR games. And they were willing to try out a preseason for us. So we did a preseason, and we got enough teams to turn that into real seasons. That we just finished season 4, I guess, last month, which had, I don't know, some hundreds of players, like 15 teams or more. Bunch of players, bunch of teams, good prizes. And the VRML runs completely independently of Giants Game. It's its own organization with its own people and its own moderators. And we, like, if they're like, hey, we need like this new caster cam feature that has different angles on it for our casters, then we can build features for them. But otherwise, we're completely hands-on, which is really nice. Saves up more time for development. Cool. All right. One more thing.
So do they commission those features, or is it just marketing to you for free?
Yeah, for VRML so far, everything's been done on a partnership basis. Yeah, so we, if they have feedback that we think will benefit the game as a whole, then we're happy to implement it. Does that answer your question?
So did they ever pay for any of those? Or no? You're doing it all.
All purely based on the partnership. Cool. All right, and then this last one is actually, I think, other than the giant spike, which we're going to explain a little bit in user growth. Adoption and awareness in the real-life paintball community is our other biggest bump. So that earlier bump that you saw has mostly been through pro paintball players, paintball brands, and companies taking a look at it, being excited about it, and then re-promoting it on their feeds. And we've had, I've been on pro paintball podcasts talking about the game. We've had pros that have their own like podcasts and vidcasts that will like spend time shouting out the game while they're talking to their audience, and that's pulled in a ton of users for us. Yeah.
Just as a point of comparison, do you do much community management for your single player games?
No. So, yeah, I should clarify too here that, so, Chop It was our first game that came out, and it had like a moment in time. So it's it's in maintenance mode. We don't mess with it much. And then Super Psycho Baseball is more of our third member of Giant Scam's project, so he kind of takes care of that angle. So right now, all of our time, whether it's on the community side or the dev side, is on Snapshot.
There was a period when Chop It was still fresh and we were adapting new ways to load in beat maps for different songs in, and we added community support for things like that. There was we were really active on that this summer, but it is kind of died off. The timing of Chop It was unfortunate. We made a grand game and then Beat Saber came out like a week before.
Absolutely crushed.
Yes, deservedly so. Like Beat Saber's very good.
Okay, in that case, with the Chop It, how does it support with Linux community?
With Linux.
Yes, because I know a bunch of Linux devs
Yes.
and XR devs.
You're not gonna love my answer. I don't care at all about Linux format for VR. Which, for VR specifically. For all other types of games, I think they should be completely cross-platform. For VR, if you look at user engagement, I mean, it's like 99% Windows. It is so high. Not to say that it's not growing and that it's not a valuable community. It's just not something we focused on so far. It's a good question.
It just when it comes to XR VR devs, they mainly been Linux users, so that's why.
Yeah, I think the devs definitely lean like Linux, Unixy environments. The players so far at least have been majority Windows. That could change. Like we saw, Apple's announcement of their headset, right? So we could see more platforms needing more content like this.
The tools are better for cross-platform VR now than years ago.
3 years ago, yep. Cool. What else are people curious about in this kind of piece of the world, this part of the talk?
How much did you do before it was actually, I know you said you had the closed alpha and beta, did you do any community building to hype it up before it actually released?
Yeah, we did. So the Reddit and Facebook group stuff, we did a ton of engagement there. And we actually did work with a marketing firm for, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months before early access launch. We did not get a lot of value out of that. We got, a few articles posted in like Upload VR and other places like that, which is great, but there's so much noise in those like areas of content that we weren't getting as much engagement. I think we would have been better off just spending it on promoting ads on socials and things like that. Yeah, cool. I mentioned Paintball IRL. So me and Tanner, this was before launch. We decided to go work with that community directly. So we went down to the World Cup of Paintball in 2019 down in Lakeland, Florida. And we set up a booth like this, and we had our partners at HTC send us some gaming laptops and some HTC kits. And we set up a dedicated server there on the premises, and we ran one-on-ones throughout the event. So we were there Wednesday through Sunday, I think. And people just come up and play their friend one-on-one in Snapshot. A cool thing that we did here too is paintball events are played on a single layout of obstacles. So like they decide this is the layout for this event. So we mapped that layout of obstacles into the game. So people were playing the same game in Snapshot that they were playing in real life when they were playing in their tournament throughout the weekend. So we ran that, and what we were doing behind the scenes is we were collecting data about every kill that happened in the game over the weekend. So every morning we would produce a new version of this screenshot, which was saying, based on how people are playing this field layout digitally, these are the most advantageous or disadvantageous places that you can be playing in real life on this field. So we tried to give people an understanding of how does practicing in Snapshot translate into being a better paintball player? And what can I learn about paintball and the sport of paintball by having statistics like this?
Were you able to track statistics of the real world? So did they overlay pretty accurately, or?
No, for context, a paintball match is 5-on-5. Each gun is shooting between 10 and 15 rounds a second. So it makes it really hard to go eyeball exactly what's happening out there. I like that.
I didn't know if you were like, if they, like,
Yeah.
kills were marked, this is where they, I didn't know if that was the case.
Yeah, there's no export that we have access to in the real sport of paintball. What we've done this a bunch of times. Like a big tournament will get announced. They'll say, this is the layout we're going to use in 2 weeks at the event. We'll put the layout in that night, and we'll run thousands of matches on that layout before the event even starts. And then we're releasing insider info essentially to the paintball community saying like, hey, based on 10,000 matches, here's where we think you should be playing when you get to the event. And then people can come back to us and say, yeah, that was about right, or no, you had this bumper wrong, or whatever. Yeah, so at World Cup, we ran 291 once, about 1,500 kills, and we were able to get a pretty decent feel of how that particular layout plays.
It sounds like you got feedback from the players, like people found it helpful? Or?
Yeah, we've had some community members that will pop in. We have a paintball channel in our Discord. They'll say, hey guys, I played Snapshot for 3 months, and then I played my first real life tournament today, and I got second place, or whatever. So we get a lot of feedback about like, this inspired me to go play, and I think I'm doing okay for a beginner. Yeah. Any other questions here?
Yeah, how would you say, like, how well did the skills transfer over between, like, real paintball and
Yeah.
Snapshot?
Everything except for the movement translates over really well. So, like the gunfighting, like knowing how to play tight behind a particular object, and like when to peek out and shoot, and how to dodge, and things like that, that's all pretty one-to-one. Movement, obviously it's simulated in Snapshot. You do like move within your play area, but mostly players are using the joystick or one of our other locomotion methods for the longer distance moves.
Gotcha.
Say, as not a paintball player, I played in the woods a few times as a kid, not anything like what he did. The biggest thing that I've seen is the amount of team communication is so clutch, like playing a good MOBA team. They're always in communication, they're paying attention to their role on the team. Learning that in Snapshot translates to paintball.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, the communication piece is huge. And one of the features I call out later when you're thinking about building multiplayer is figuring out how you're going to do voice chain. So it's a big piece. All right, here's our Steam sales lifetime. This is the first talk I've ever just given people raw data about how much money we made. Okay, so you'll do the math yourselves. But essentially, this is like a pretty normal, like I'd say from like here to here is a pretty normal looking chart for a game release, where you build up a bunch of hype, and then you launch, and it's like, boom, day one is the most sales we'll ever have, day two is the second most sales we'll ever have, and then things start tapering off. Very normal, very cool. If you don't have that great first couple of days, some people think, oh, I'm really in trouble. The good thing about multiplayer games, or like live services games, is that you get these other opportunities throughout the lifetime of your game to say like, we've heard your feedback, we're gonna release this big new feature or these huge bug fixes or whatever the community's asking for, and you get the chance to like win back sentiment from your players. So this is Steam sales. We'll take a look at another graph in a little bit that makes this one look interesting in my opinion. All right, now we're talking about what were some of those opportunities for us to win customers or win players. And here are some of the features that I think were the most impactful. Tanner might have a few on his list as well. One is custom cosmetics. So for our early adopters of the game, we had maybe 10 folks that were super, super active when the game was in alpha, and we made them their own one-of-a-kind in-game cosmetic that no one else would ever have. And some of those players are still with us, still rocking those cosmetics from 3 years ago. And we could post on socials like, hey, look at these awesome cosmetics we made for these players, and that was a reason for people to join. And we also, for one of our marketing engagements was with a Twitch streamer, and we made her like a crazy cosmetic. It was like a huge like rainbow, like cat ears, I think, and a big rainbow ponytail, and a diamond heart right here. It was wild, but it was really cool. Let's skip ahead a little bit to show
That was the
you.
first time I learned how to use jiggle physics, and that's crazy.
Yeah. Here's some of the cosmetics we have. I think these days, this is a very small sample of the number of cosmetics that we have in total. We also do custom cosmetics for certain leagues or events. So if you win a big event, maybe you get a golden gun, or you get a jersey with your team's name on it, or whatever. That was pretty cool. We also added our own stat tracking and leaderboards, so people could know what are my lifetime kills and deaths, how am I doing on average. That looks like this. This is my profile. I was one of the first user accounts ever created for Snapshot. And you'll see, let's put this into context. I played via the Unity editor being open more hours of this game than anyone on Earth. And I have 1,911 kills. This player, Jigo199, started playing about 6 months ago and has 75,000 kills, which is pretty bananas. This shows you
Never sleeps.
yeah, right? It's crazy. It's like when you launch a game and you're like, I've been playing this game for so much longer than anyone else that's playing on day one. I'm going to be really good at this game. And then 3 days later, you're not even in the top 10. And that's the reality of multiplayer game development.
I haven't won a game of Snapshot in a long time.
Oh my goodness, no. I'm terrible now compared to these kids. It's cool to see, right? We have 3 players now with over 50,000 kills. Our first player over 50,000 kills was about a month ago. It's showing that we have some players that are super, super engaged, right? Playing every day, multiple times a day.
I've known people who basically live in the VR.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So what are some of the VR games that you like?
So the way I got VR is actually through VR chat.
Yeah.
So I haven't really explored any of these other ones, but playing the VR arcade chats, Infected is really big, Murder is fun because you're trying to kill your friends. Right?
Nice. These were experiences within VR chat? Cool.
Yeah, so VR chat.
Murder is fun.
Just murder.
Yeah, and then someone created a new variation of with a different name, Blackout, which means you actually possibly can kill murder as well before you get killed. And that's a new game to look at the current fun one's Prison Escape.
Nice. Cool.
But they're using Udon, but sometimes Udon messes up because when you're doing full body tracking in VR,
Oh, yeah.
and it interferes with Udon. I have not got there yet. I'm getting slime. I'm still not set up the slime yet because stripes. It's slime and
Yeah.
stripes different.
Yeah, VR chat is its own ecosystem.
Yeah.
People build full-on games and experiences within VR chat. It's very cool.
Oh yeah.
So, how did you handle development of multiplayer before you had an audience? Did
Yeah.
you make bots, or was it just in-house? You guys played with each other, or stuff like that?
Yes. Though bots came late. The actual answer for your question is me and Tanner played one-on-one all the time. And that's kind of still how we do it. Before any major release, this is bad development practice, by the way. I will just write insane code. I'll just write a huge feature, and I'll be like, it's probably good. And Tanner's like, maybe we should get on and join the same server and make sure it works. And I'm like, I guess. And we get in there and everything's broken, and it's my fault. But that's cowboy coding for you. I'm a cowboy coder. Don't be afraid to be one as well. And have someone like Tanner on your side to help keep you in check. But we would just get online with a small group of us, 2 or 3 people, run through the motions, do all the buttons still work, kind of still shoot you, and make sure things are good. You do have to, and I'll talk more about this later, you really need to build for multiplayer from day one. It's really hard to build a single player game and then decide later, I'm going to make this a multiplayer game. Just the architecture that you will use is a little bit different. What else do we got on here? Along with stat tracking and leaderboards, later came leveling, so XP and leveling, and unlockables. So we introduced some, you hit level 10, you get a new gun, level 20, you get a new map, that kind of thing. We're expanding more on this area now. We're going to have some big announcements around that in the next couple of months. And then bots and guest accounts. These were two areas we were getting a lot of feedback in our reviews. There was a time, and there's a graph showing this later, where our refund rate was about 15%. It's pretty high. And it was because of that side effect of being a new multiplayer game that I mentioned earlier, which is I bought the game, I got on, no one was on, I refunded the game. Like that's just a normal cycle in user acquisition for early multiplayer games. So one way to allow people to experience the first half of that, which is I'm online, no one's on, but still give them something to do, is to make bots. So I spent a bunch of cycles, I think it's 6 or 8 weeks, working on bots. I built them myself, and it took a lot of refactors of like our player architecture to be like, oh, now I'm the server and I have 10 players that I control. And like that's a very different thing than I'm the server and I'm this one player that's actively playing the game. And we built them super, super simple. Like it's a scrappy version of a state machine where a bot just says at any given moment, like, do I want to move right now or do I want to shoot somebody right now? And they go through these two states over and over at random intervals. So we change up the time. And I would say for 5 seconds, I'm going to be in shooting mode. And then for 2 seconds, I'm going to be in moving mode. And then for 1 second, I'm going to be in shooting mode. And for 5 seconds, I'm going to be in moving mode. And we go back and forth. And all it's doing is saying, where do I want to run to next? I'll run there. Who can I see? Out of the people I can see, I'm going to choose one at random and I'm going to shoot at them. That's all our bots do. And it's enough to give people a gameplay experience where they can go in, they can get shot at, they can shoot at a thing, and that's enough to keep people engaged for a little bit longer.
And sometimes it's all it takes is having that other person come online and see there's a server up, they join in and just get into a game right go.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that people choose to play against bots whenever there are living people there?
We see both. So we have in our Discord, I didn't mention this earlier, we have 2 muted by default channels. One is new lobby alerts. That's a ping anytime a new server is created. So you can opt in to get alerted for that. The other is live match updates, which is at the end of every round in every server, we post the scoreboard and the time remaining, the status and stuff in that server. So someone can be like, oh, without having to jump in VR and go to the server browser, they can just go to that channel and be like, there's 2 servers up, there's 5 people on this one, 10 minutes left, that's a good one for me, I'll go jump in there. But I often, this is weird, I often just watch that channel. Like I just hang out and I'm like, oh, like these 2 teams are practicing, well, this team's doing really good tonight. And I'll find a lot of private servers, just one person in a room full of bots. And it's a lot of times it's new players that are nervous about joining a game with experienced players. They want like a no pressure environment to go in and shoot around and learn the mechanics.
Yeah, that's kind of smart. I would probably do the same.
Yeah, I think it's if you can do it, like if you have the dev cycles to add bots, it can definitely help. Yeah.
I know like Overwatch has always had bots. And I'm like, who the hell's playing like against bots? But like they're always like working on it and like fixing bugs in it. And like apparently, yeah, even though that's a huge game,
right?
You can always find the game pretty quickly. Like some people just want to play against bots.
Yeah, it's a different level of pressure, I guess. It's like I can go be terrible for a while if I want. No one's going to be upset. Speaking of people getting upset, we'll get into that in a little bit. What else did we make? We made guest accounts. So some of the reviews we were getting were like, hey, like I launched the game, I don't want to have to sign up for a Snapshot account. And we have Snapshot accounts because we do all this, cosmetic assignment and leaderboards and stats and things. So I think this is one of Tanner's least favorite features. I just want to call that out. I made a really wacky thing, which someone can just press play as guest, and it logs them in immediately, and they can play immediately with like guest 1, 2, 3, 4, some random username. It's great for getting people in the game quickly, immediately. It's terrible for a lot of other reasons. One is it's a really great workaround if you get banned from the game. Like, if we ban your account, which you really care about, maybe we ban your guest account we've been playing on for 6 months. Or maybe you say, I'm just going to go infinitely create new guest accounts. That's not good. And also, it really polluted our user account pool in AWS. Where, like, for a while, we said, like, oh, this is clearly a person that intentionally signed up to play this game. And now it's like 50,000 on accounts. So, guest account, good for solving that particular pain point. I did it in a super scrappy way. And we got some tech done because of it.
If you had to solve this problem today with a fresh project, I would recommend something like PlayFab, where you create a user account with like a device ID, then you should automatically logging that person in every time that device starts. If they choose to give you a username and upgrade to a full account, great. But then you've already got an account kind of associated with it. PlayFab's a good tool to do that, but there's plenty of other options.
Yes, well said. Yep. Yeah. Things we learned over 3 years working on a multiplayer game, right?
Are you not able to modify the current guest accounts to something else?
We can modify them, we cannot convert them. So what I
So
do.
modify so you
Yeah.
can track them better, get the data and someone kind of figure out.
Yeah, there's a loose association between device and guest account in that it tries, like if you create a guest account, it tries to tie that to your device ID so that if you log out and click play as guest again, it'll try to re-log you in as that same guest. Not super reliable. So yeah, there are things that we can improve to make that clear.
There are things we're working on right now.
That is right. Things specifically Tanner is working on because he is smart. Cool. All right. We added new modes to the game that were like more and more similar to real paintball style and things like that. And then custom maps. I really like this slide. Me and Tanner made in JSON files by hand the first 7 layouts that the game launched with. So like we specifically said like this can or like cylinder shaped object is at these coordinates in the map. And we did that for every object of the map for the first 7. And then we had some people that were actually like, they wanted to make custom maps so bad, they reverse engineered our JSON file and figured out how to make new maps by hand again. And then one day, I was looking at this thing, which is 2dpaintball.com. This is not Snapshot. This is another video game that is on the internet. And I was like, this game has a field creator. I wonder if I can write a parser for their field creator so that their maps work in Snapshot. And I told the developer, I was like, can I do this? And he was like, that's fine. So now I would bet that there are more people using 2dpaintball.com to make Snapshot maps than there are playing the game 2D Paintball. So this gives you like a nice GUI, and what we had to do was like, say a can of this radius means this in Snapshot, and a box of these dimensions means this in Snapshot. We wrote a big Medium article about like, here's what to make in this thing if you want it to look like this in Snapshot. And the result is that about a year ago, we moved, like we were actually, the community would make a map, they would post the JSON file in the Discord, we would copy it into Unity, and then in the next release, everyone would get the newest 5 maps or whatever. So we moved to storing all the map files in the cloud so we can serve them dynamically without having to re-release the game. And now there's 650 maps in Snapshot, which is crazy. It makes like filtering them a nightmare, which another thing we're working on. But I mean, we have everything from, you probably have almost every major paintball tournament series layout from the past 5 or 10 years in the game. And then you have people that get really creative and make like mazes and different types of, one person made like a D-Day map with a bunch of like, kind of like cross bunkers and then like a line of defense. So people, even given a limited tool set, right, which is like, you got this handful of Lego blocks, basically arrange them how you want, they can get really creative and come up with some cool, engaging, playable maps. Cool. Any question about anything on this slide or anything else feature related?
What's the technical overhead of cloud delivery? Is it too bad?
It's not too bad. It's not too bad because you can, we're going to talk about netcode a lot in a minute if people are still up for that. But you can do this with like a regular web API. Like you can just build, as if you were building a website that serves web content, you can just build yourself an endpoint, say, give you these JSON files, and you can call that endpoint from within your code. So you're not interfering at all with the networked experience of the game. You're just serving data just like you would if you were building a web app.
And as far as maintaining these apps on the internet, these are JSON files in an S3 bucket sitting behind the CloudFront content delivery network, and everything's not pushed to the Git repo all over the place in S3.
Yep.
It's a really simple setup.
Yeah, so these days the workflow is like twice a week. We check the Discord, there's 10 new maps, throw all those files in the GitHub, press the button, boom, everyone has them. So, much nicer. Anything else on this one? Cool. I don't remember where we go from here. Let's see. We did these. The big spike that everyone's been wondering about. All right, so the blue line is that same Steam units sold over time. That's over the full 3 years this game's been around. The red line is when we launched on Quest, when we launched on the Oculus Store, Oculus App Lab, actually. So you can see that this wasn't even on launch day, but not far after launch day, we had a similar shaped spike as our release, but with about 4 times the users, 4 times the sales. And even after the initial hype of launching on Quest died down, we still are at or above the highest month we've ever had on Steam. And again, this is 3 years after the game came out. This was about 3 years, over 2 years after the game came out that we hit this. And again, it's because we found one of those opportunities to engage a new sector of our audience. The Quest barrier to entry is much lower. You can get a Quest for $300-400. You don't need a PC. You can jump straight in. A kid can ask for it for Christmas. It's just a different thing than PC VR. So there's a ton of Quest users out there. Building for Quest is hard, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But once you get it done, it really expands your audience because it's way more accessible than when it was on a PC-based marketplace.
Now, is your Quest version compatible with your PC version?
Yep. Yes. So we'll talk about maintaining code bases for Quest and PC in a second too. But yeah, it was definitely a tenet of ours. Everything had to be cross-platform. And even people can use the same account. If they have both the Quest and PC VR, they can carry over all the items and stuff. Cool. Big spot. Working on Quest. I mean, this is the answer. The mute button is the most important thing that you need to build if you're going to launch on Quest. But optimization is probably the long haul. Like, if you've built a thing that runs well on PC hardware, chances are, if you go press the build for Quest button, it's not going to run very well on essentially a very fancy Android phone on your face. So, Matt, we worked, I don't know, a year probably. We were keeping the game running, but we were mostly spending our dev cycles trying to get our Quest build working. And it took very serious refactors, swapping Unity versions multiple times, changing rendering pipelines multiple times. I don't know, Tanner, speak intelligently about some of the hard work we had to do here.
I got a lot closer to the hardware and learned more about how GPUs and shaders work than I ever thought I would have needed to, just to get over the performance hurdles for this running on tiny GPUs on Quest hardware. And still to this day, I hate using transparent shaders anyway.
Yeah. You would think it's okay to put a partially transparent item in your game. Turns out not okay. You can't do it. You should not do it. Especially if you're running on mobile hardware. So anyway, that was a bunch of work, but as you saw in the giant sales spike, I think we both would say it was worth it. Managing 2 code repositories is a good question about interoperability between Quest and PC. We did have to keep 2 Git branches for a while. one that had our original PC implementation and another that had all the optimizations and like, in some cases we were swapping out full parts of the map and stuff for Quest to make it run a little smoother. So we kind of maintained these two things in parallel for a long time. And then we did a big old refactor that I'll call out some of our big refactors in a minute that got us into one code base. But it took us a long time.
Is this Unity?
It is a Unity game, yeah.
If it made you feel better, I was a game night in VR chat before I changed jobs. First 6 months, I used an avatar that I didn't realize was not Quest compatible, so they just told me on the default.
Yeah.
I was a robot for a lot of people.
Who knew? Yeah. Considerations. I mean, I think take to heart if you're building a console game as well. Like, think about having to be intentional about the different platforms that you're supporting. It may require extra work that you didn't expect. And then moderation tools. Man, that's the one. If you're going to launch on Quest, Quest's audience, in my opinion, not an official position, is a bit younger. And I would say feistier would be the word I would use. So we launched on Quest without these tools because our PC audience was potentially a little more mature and we didn't need them. And then like a week after Quest launched, it was just made like people just screeching at each other. It was wild. So this was another one of those like, Tanner, you gotta help us out here. So he made a new menu that not only allowed you to mute anyone at any time from a little risk menu, but also you could report people, which sends us a Discord message or sends us a Mixpanel report, something like that. It gives us
It's logged in our metrics and we can kind of keep track of who the problem is.
That's right, yeah. So this just like gives us a little data about who's been reported a bunch of times. And then a kick does a vote to kick and people can vote you out. So this is not enough. Like this helps, but now you can probably see some weaknesses here. Like now, let's say the server gets overrun by these kids and then they kick everyone else out. Right? Like, wow, you just entered this battle with 14-year-olds that you never thought you were going to be in. And we just do this now. We're not game developers anymore. We're just building moderation tools all the time. So it's tough. Yeah, this is the cost, right? You get paid more because you're released on a platform with more users, but wow, your time gets used a little bit differently.
Out of curiosity, with regards to the optimization, was the major issue that the Quest was lower power? Did it fundamentally, like the hardware, the pipelines have different capabilities? Like, are we talking GL versus like GLES, for instance?
It was probably most of our issues. From day one, we started with a very low-res art style, like low poly style, specifically because we knew the Quest wasn't even out when we first launched the game, but we knew we wanted to be on it. And a lot of those textures, most of the pixels on the screen come from the same texture that's 8 pixels by 8 pixels, just a color map, and the UVs are positioned everywhere correctly for most of the models. Anything that's not like a jersey falls into those color palettes. So performance-wise, it was great, but not until I used RenderDoc and started diving into, I'm spending most of this frame just transporting all these textures to and from, moving stuff around memory. That's where we lost so much performance. So just optimizing draw calls, optimizing rendering order. I still wouldn't say we've solved this. We still
definitely not solved
it. But those are the big things that move the needle. So
we're currently blocked on a release because of Quest performance. And we didn't even change anything. Anyway, difficult. But yeah.
But RenderDoc is a good tool for stuff like that.
Yeah.
So at this point, you're on one code base?
Yes.
And so you were able to integrate all the things that you, the efficiency that you got from the Quest brought it back up to easy.
Yeah. It was always one code base, but we kind of had a really long branch that we didn't expect to last that long. Just because it took a lot longer than we thought to get out there. But then at the end of that, with all the changes, there was no clean merge path. So it was a big refactor to get all those fundamental changes once we actually knew what we were doing in that branch back to a stable point where we could actually say, build desktop, build Quest.
Are there any major things or like main things that you would change if you were building something from the ground up for Quest and PC?
One of the most important things I think of today is getting my build scripts ready first so that I can have one bash script or one GitHub action or something that will end up with a build on both platforms so that when I'm iterating quickly later and banging my head against the wall, I don't have to sit there and wait for the project to re-import on every platform and build it locally on my machine. I can hit build, go to the bathroom or go walk the dog and then come back and test the next one out.
That's a really good point. Yeah, some of the nights, I mean, me and Tanner would both have to get online to do a release. And we still do, like releases, while they're much easier with our tooling now, we're still serious events and like we have to get on and make sure they go smoothly. But back then it was like, load up Unity, check out the PC platform branch, switch the platform in Unity to PC. These all take like 5 minutes each. Build for PC, check out the branch for Quest, switch the platform in Unity to Quest, it's another 10 minutes gone. Build for Quest, then hopefully things work. And then if they don't work, you gotta start over again. So yeah.
Also, buy a good SSD hard drive. Like,
Oh,
getting a good fast SSD makes a big difference.
All right. This is lifetime aggregate sales versus aggregate refunds. So what I mentioned earlier was that before we built some of our more retentive features, these lines were growing somewhat together, which is bad. So like our refund percentage was hovering between like 10 and 20% for a while, which is a lot. You know, that's like 1 out of every 6 copies when we were at like 15% was getting refunded, which is bad. So we had to figure out along the way, you know, what were those big friction points for users? And what I'm really happy about is this never really grew much. So again, this is aggregate refunds. This is aggregate sales. This is where Quest came out and bumped up our Steam plus Quest sales to get up to here. And now our refund percentage is very, very low. So what really this indicates is like, if you can retain a community long enough and you have a focus on quality, then you can end up in the situation where you kind of beat the trend. You like beat the refund trend. I was really worried for a long time we were not going to beat the refund trend. Like it would have killed us to go 3 years with a 15% refund rate. But to be able to get way, way out of that really helped us out a lot.
Were you able to collect any data on why people were requesting refunds? I mean, I'm sure a lot of it was like they go online and somebody explain.
Yep. Steam reviews were the biggest source of feedback for that. And also when a player refunds a game, they have the option to select a refund reason, and you can you get metrics from Steam on that as well. So yeah, a lot of it was that like it took too long for me to get spun up because I had to make an account, or I got online, nobody was online, sorry, and then they bounced.
What's the refund percentage on Quest compared to Steam? Do you know that?
Quest is lower, mostly because Quest came out later after we had polished the game up a bunch. Steam is back down less than 10% these days. Quest is about 2%, so it's like very.
Does that mean like maybe there's more culture on savvy Steam gamers who know how to get a refund? Like a young kids on the Quest.
Right? Yeah, good point. All right.
Yeah.
So we're at an hour now. If anyone doesn't want to stick around, that's fine. Don't feel bad about that. I'm also happy to talk about the rest of the smaller group if there's a smaller group that wants to stick around longer. Otherwise, I can just keep going. Whatever y'all want to do. Good for now? Okay.
I just have one question about your term multiplayer, and because I like that that it's multiplayer, but you have leaderboards and whatnot. I kind of want to do that same thing, but it's going to be a single player, but it's going to be leaderboards and high scores. You know what I'm saying? So like, because I seen that there, and I was like, that was good too.
Yeah.
For my.
Yeah, I think you should. Yeah, when we released our single-player rhythm game, we also released leaderboards because it gives people a sense of competition and community. even if they're not playing like in the same scene as somebody else. Okay, so on that focus on quality, here are some of the things we did that helped us with that. We answered, I think, a little bit of that in the last question, but in our Discord channel, we have a feedback channel, which is like fair game, tell us our game sucks, suggest insane features that we'll never build. It's like all over the place, but we get a ton of feedback. I think every day, multiple times a day, I check that Discord and that channel's lit up as in someone's posted something new there. So we get a ton of feedback that way. We use a service called Canny, right? That's the name of that. Canny, which is like, I don't know if anyone's ever used like user voice there. It's a platform where people can go write in suggestions and then other people can vote on those suggestions. So we have a Canny, which is like a stack ranked community feedback list, essentially, where someone's like, I wish the game had, a different type of gun or whatever. And then people come in and vote up or down. And that helps us prioritize when we do these kind of like quality cycles, what we need to tackle. If you're using Unity, make sure to take advantage of the dashboard. You have a dashboard as long as your project's registered with Unity, and it will automatically collect exception and crash reports for your game, which is great because people are running on different hardware, doing different things that you might not expect. And this can help you track down some of the more serious issues.
To that point, to keep your signal to noise ratio good in their tools, don't ignore your own errors. Like, I know what that is on the like Meetup from.
Yeah. Yep. Mixpanel is another thing we've more recently started using. That's a cloud service where you can just basically code in very simple events into your game. And if you want to be like, every time someone scores a kill, tick a counter. Mixpanel's great for that. It has event level reporting for whatever types of events you might care about. Someone logged in, someone created a server, a match ended, a kill was counted, someone killed their teammate, someone reported someone. You can really have really simple that happened today, I can look into it.
It's an analytics tool. You could use something like Google Analytics in that place, or Amplitude. I know it's popular in big VR titles.
And then, make sure that you're doing this. I tend to get excited about big, fancy new things. I like to build a lot of our bigger gameplay systems and things like that. But you gotta balance it out. You gotta give the community new shiny stuff, take some time to clean up the house, and do that cycle over and over. They'll appreciate it. The game gets better over time. Some notable bugs. These are just things I think are funny. We were plagued, this is my favorite one, the top one. A single player crashes the server due to their profile picture. So basically, all we were hearing, we released a new version of the game, and people start saying, hey man, the game's crashing. I don't know why, it's so random. And we started looking through our crash reporting. It's not the same type of hardware, it's not Windows versus Quest. It's not the same game scenario. They're on different maps, different numbers of players. We rolled back the release because we said, well, we released something, we don't know what it is. We rolled back the release. The crash kept happening on the previous version of the game that had never crashed. And we're like, that's the same code that didn't crash and now it's crashing. So we basically, for weeks, we're trying everything. We're turning features on and off. We have players trying experimental builds of the game to see if it's helping. And what we eventually find is this one player is in every server. Crashes. That's really weird. And so I asked if I could log into their account. And I log into their account and I join a server and it tries to load a 40 megabyte profile picture. It crashes. And that was when we realized we weren't properly resizing and optimizing profile
So
pictures.
it's fixed for them on our website. We just rejected files. Bigger thing.
But it was I'm the type of person that can't handle when the game's crashing or when there's a serious bug. It drives me insane if there's a thing I don't understand about what's happening. This one about killed me. It was I know how this works and it's breaking, and I cannot understand it. And then, yeah, it was just this one dude just fucking us up for lack of better term.
How long did it take to serve that?
I think this was probably live for 3 weeks, something like that, before we figured out the fix.
Why did they keep trying to play if it crashed every single time they joined the
Well, they didn't know, they just thought every server was crashed. You know, and then all the other players just thought, this random thing happened again, and we crashed. Because they didn't know this guy had just joined the server. We couldn't find the pattern. It took time.
Did you give them a custom cosmetic?
Thank you for breaking.
Big skull.
Yeah.
Did you give like some custom badge?
Yeah, they should, yeah. QA tester. Yeah, exactly.
Or beta crash?
This one was recent. This was another random crash we couldn't figure out until we found that the pattern was all the players that were crashing were on a specific version of the Quest OS. Quest rolls out their OS in stages, so not 100% of players get them at the same time. So we would have like the same player with the same account get on 2 different headsets. One would crash, the other wouldn't. What is happening? There actually was not a fix for this. Like we found a workaround. I reported it to Meta. They were just like, oh, that's crazy. So yeah, it was just a certain version of Quest was crashing our game in particular. And then like just funny broken stuff. Like two players press the buzzer at the end of a round, and then everyone spawns back on the field, and they're all excited. And then the horn blows, and they're about to start playing, and then the buzzer goes again because we had chewed up the buzzer. Ended up killing their team. We've had multiple versions of I can't see anything. One is like we rendered this like black canvas and we fade it out to give you the sense of fading into the environment. Sometimes an exception gets thrown in the fade out script, so you just have this black canvas in front of you all the time, and you can like see your hand if you put it in your face, but you can't see anything else. Out of bounds. It's really hard to keep VR players in areas, because they like use their joystick and they bump up against the wall, and then in real life, they just walk through the wall. So like people either intentionally or accidentally getting stuck in funny places. Bots just behaving insane. Like we've had bots start ignoring the nav mesh before, so they like run through objects and like out of the stadium and stuff. And then the Superman glitch, which is one of my favorites, is this thing. So watch this guy. This will work. So you'll see like multiple frames of him coming from here down here, and then he does this crazy dance right here. This is because in networked game, you're having to send information about players over packets. And for VR, at a minimum, you need where my hands are, where my head is, and where my play area, like my play area is in 3D space. Problem is, if you don't compress that very well, then that information can arrive on separate packets, which means that you're getting that separate network ticks, which means like my right hand started flying across the map, and then 2 frames later, my left hand started flying across the map. And we have an IK system that tries to simulate the body's bones based on those 3 positions. And so it's trying to like catch the rest of the body up with all of these objects in different places. And it gives, the reason we call it the Superman effect is oftentimes the hands come in together, but the play area doesn't. So you see like a player like stretch, fly across the entire map. And then it takes a few frames for everything to resolve. Kind of in the same quality vein, sometimes you got to rebuild stuff. You built stuff once, you thought it was right, you came back and did it again. Here are a few of those. I'm not going to go into these in detail, but just areas where we built out a working solution and later figured out that it didn't scale well with our requirements. So we had to take, sometimes months at a time and kind of ignore new features and just rebuild significant parts of the code base. All right, multiplayer technology. I think there's only a couple of slides, so I think we can blast through this, but I'm happy to stick around if people are interested more on the technical side of multiplayer. Here are the systems you probably want to care about if you're building a multiplayer game. You need some sort of authentication and account management system. That can be something you roll yourself, like we did originally on AWS. It can be platform managed, so like Steam has a version of this, Oculus has a version of this. If you want to tie yourself to a particular platform, you can use their APIs, or you can use third party like PlayFab or something else that is a third party service built for user management. You need to do voice chat, and you need to figure out specifically like, am I going to send the voice data over the same connection, the same gameplay connection, or am I going to utilize a third-party API? Advantages and disadvantages to both. We use a thing called Vivox or Vivox. It's a Unity product. And it's more that second category where they handle the connection between players and the replicating the voice data. It just kind of removes one more thing that you would otherwise have to network yourself. Moderation we talked about. A lot of netcode libraries do not come with matchmaking functionality built in because that often requires a cloud server somewhere to serve all the lobbies. So think about how you're going to do that. And then netcode and hit detection is the actual hard part. And we'll talk about that real quick. Netcode libraries you might use. If you're a Unity developer, you have to make a choice out of many, many options. Photon's very popular, and they have a bunch of different flavors that are good at different things. Mirror is a pretty popular community-run solution. Unity Netcode for game objects is new. Unity has a tendency of building new things and then not supporting them for a very long time. So I'm a little bit cautious with this one, but it does look promising. And then UNet is Unity's legacy solution. So you'll have to like read a bunch of Reddit's threads on Photon versus Mirror versus whatever to figure out what you want. We built Snapshot first in Punt, later migrated it to Bolt. We prototyped it with Quantum, it was not a good fit for us. And then I built some apps on Mirror as well. Unreal Engine is much easier. Unreal is actually built for multiplayer, so you just use Unreal. All right. Some things you need, and this is like the demystifying multiplayer slide, hopefully. If you want to understand multiplayer technology better, ask questions on this slide. You really only need like a handful of pieces of functionality to make a multiplayer game. Message passing is the biggest one, but message passing is not inherently a complex thing. Like, you can build a multiplayer game by writing a script that sends an email with my input commands to the other player, and they can write a script that parses that email and performs those actions in the game, right? Like, you can do a multiplayer game by calling each other. This is just trying to make all that fast. Like, all you're doing is taking that very simple concept and trying to make it fast. So your library of choice will probably come with most of these systems. You need both reliable and unreliable or reliable-ish message passing. You need reliable for like, I need to log who won that game. Like really like, oh, these are important messages. And you need unreliable for like, I'm doing these so often, if I miss a few, it's okay. And that's like, I may be sending my hand position 30 or more times a second. If I miss 2 of those, like it's still a playable game, right? So you need that. You need the ability to call functionality on another client. So I need the server to be able to tell the client, hey, you died, and do your die sequence. You need events to be able to say things like, the game started, everyone, unlock their gun and start the timer. And you need state replication to keep track of like, who's on what team, and how many kills do they have, and what cosmetics are they wearing, and things that every client in the server needs to know for everyone to be on the same page about what's happening in the game. You need compression because of the issue I mentioned earlier. Like you need to be intentional about what data gets collected together, hopefully it arrives together, because it may impact a piece of your gameplay. You need to be able to specify how many ticks you want your net rate to be. So on PC games, like a lot of games run like unlimited rendering FPS, right? Like as fast as the computer will render it, that's how many frames you get. Your physics system is always running at some pace different. I was going to say slower. It's not always true, but usually different than that, which is like 30 times a second, 60 times a second, 90 times a second. I run physics, and I do that very consistently because I don't want like player 1 who's running at 150 FPS and player 2 who's running at 50 FPS to have a different physics experience. You want those to always be the same across clients. Same with networking. You want to decide how often do I want to be sending the data that all clients need about each other. Sometimes that's the same as the physics tick, sometimes it's not. Dedicated server support's great. One of the reasons we switched to Bolt was so that we could have dedicated servers. Stun and Cloud Relay, you need basically these helper pieces of functionality to make secure connections between players. It's not uncommon, like if you try to write this yourself, and you go say like, all right, I'm gonna play like my buddy in Chicago, and you go and spin up your game, and your messages start hitting their router, and they're like, I don't know who this guy is, and you get rejected, and you can't establish that connection to play. So Stun helps use a trusted third-party server to circumnavigate that blockage, and Cloud Relay provides you a backup and says, if I can't establish a peer-to-peer connection, I'll relay things through this trusted server. It's one more hop, but it's still playable. And then things that you need to care about, like these don't have to be built in. Most devs build them themselves, but it's not bad if they exist. Interpolation, which is like, again, if I'm only receiving information about all the other players 30 times a second, but I'm running at 100 frames per second, I need to be able to like smoothly, get between those positions without looking like they're jumping 30 times a second. So that's like filling in the gaps. And then extrapolation is based on players' previous actions. If I ever stop receiving data from them because of latency or an outage or something, I'm going to try to predict what they do over the next few frames, so that if like I'm running full speed in this direction and then I miss a few packets, I'll keep running that player in that direction until I get a message back that says this is where they actually ended up. And then the hardest thing for Snapshot is hit detection. And it is because it's very hard to get right. It's very hard to make it fair. You end up in this like, I hit them versus I dodged it scenario. This is true for all FPSs. There's a great talk, GDC talk from the Overwatch team on this topic. There's a good one from Rocket League. There's some good articles from Counter-Strike and Source Engine about how different games handle this. I'll tell you what we did. But to like visualize the situation, if you're running at about 90 to 100 millisecond ping at 30 network ticks per second, then I say I moved 2 units to the left at tick 4. The server says that you did it at tick 6, and the other player sees it at tick 8. So it's physically impossible currently to have all 3 of these people be on the same page at the same time. So you have to be thoughtful about who do you trust in which situation to make the gameplay feel as fair as possible. This is what that looks like. So in Snapshot, the server, a dedicated server, keeps position history of every player for about 3 seconds, so about 90 ticks for every player. And so when I want to build a visualization like this, all I say is like, draw my player, draw the position in my history a few ticks ago, so like my round trip time divided by 2 ticks ago, and then draw my position, my full round trip time ticks ago. And so I'm me, blue is where the server thinks I am, yellow is where the player that's trying to shoot me thinks I am. And that's really complex and really difficult for a one-hit kill game like Snapshot, where if I think I'm here, but I got shot here, then that doesn't feel fair to me. And the same thing with like, if I see myself shoot someone here, but they were actually here, then that doesn't feel fair to me either. So you have to introduce some bias. Like there's no other way around it. You have to pick a favorite. And so you have some options. One is let the server decide everything. Like the server is the source of truth. If the server sees the hit happen, it'll tell both the shooter and the person that got shot, that they hit at. The problem with that is the server, as you saw that blue there, the server thinks it's somewhere that neither the shooter or the target thinks they are. So you can have situations where the server's like, yep, you got hit. The client doesn't feel good because they didn't see it hit. The target doesn't feel good because they don't see it hit, even though this is technically the most fair because we're dealing with like equally latent information. You can favor the shooter. If you favor the shooter by itself, what if the shooter starts cheating? You ever heard of aim bots? That's what happens here. So the shooter says, I shot that person. The server says, yeah, you did because I favor the shooter. That's where a lot of cheats come from. And then democratic, which I do believe Tanner invented, is our witness system. I'm going to explain what this is and how it works, but essentially, like, this has served us really well. There are still some issues here in that everyone's playing latent because everyone is essentially waiting on information to gather from multiple parties. And you're at the mercy of all these other parties having good pings. Like, if everyone else in the server has a bad ping, they're going to be giving bad votes to what happened in the simulation. So to explain that a little bit further, we still use the witness system for non-dedicated servers. So if I'm hosting a game on my headset or on my PC, we use the witness system. And that means that the server is not authoritative, which is good because the server is a player, and that means they can cheat and have bad authority. But every client in the room, they report to the server every hit that they detect. So if in their physics simulation, they see that a projectile hit another player, even if it's not them, even if they didn't shoot it, they report that to the server. And the server keeps essentially like a rolling average of the votes that are coming in. And once it hits a certain threshold, it's considered trusted. And we say, all right, enough players in this game saw the same thing happen in their simulation. So now we think that's probably trusted. It's probably a good hit. And it's super lightweight on the server. So you can run this algorithm on a Quest with very, very little performance drawbacks. And it's like good enough. It feels good enough to be fair. What we are building now, which is the thing I've been working on for the past month or so, and like sending Tanner a million GIFs and videos and screenshots and like bad explanations of what I'm doing about, is completely revamping our hit detection system and implementing these systems. So one is called Projectile Fast Forward, which is a name that I made up. I think it's actually called Transform Syncing. But basically, since we know our shots are deterministic, so like our projectiles travel through the air on the same arc, no matter what platform you're on or anything like that, we can send a timestamp from the shooter that says, I shot this projectile with this orientation at this time in server time. And when another player receives that event, they can say, all right, that player shot with this orientation this long ago. So they're this many ticks ahead of me. So I can simulate those ticks in one frame and catch the ball up, catch the projectile up to where it is on the shooter client's simulation. So that is a little wonky. Like, you have to be clever here. Like, you have to discard projectiles that are way too old to be caught up. You have to handle very, very near field collisions a little bit differently because, like, if I like shoot you from this far away, by the time my shot message gets to you, the collision may have already happened. So how do I still give them the feeling that, oh, I saw that shot happen, even though it's too late for them to do anything about it? So we do projectile fast forwarding. That helps both. Like, it helps the shooter feel confident that what they're seeing is reality, and it helps the target feel less cheated if they don't dodge a ball. We do favor the shooter in that we no longer collect votes from everyone. We only collect the shooter's vote. So the shooter says, I saw myself hit that player. And then you tap on server validation of that vote to make sure that they're being trustworthy. So we keep a position history, the server does, of every player in the game. And basically, the shooter says, I shot this player at this point in time. And the server will go and look back at that point in time and be like, okay, was the player they shot actually there at that point in time or not? And it'll also basically say, like, is this shot so old? So maybe they say, I shot this person at a point in time and it was 4 seconds ago. The server will probably say, that player is really laggy, so they're not working with an accurate version of the simulation. We're going to discard that kill. So I built all this. It was hard, and I read a bunch of like papers and articles and stuff to figure out how to do it. And we ran a closed beta for about 2 weeks. Out of 1,300 confirmed kills using these systems, we only had 20 rejections, and they were all from the same laggy player. So now we feel pretty good that it's good enough to launch.
What's the threshold where you decide that a player is too laggy?
400 milliseconds right now.
That's pretty laggy.
Yeah, that's pretty laggy. We have it, so we use Unity Cloud configuration, remote configuration, something. Unity Remote Config lets you have properties in the Unity dashboard that you can update dynamically, and then players will retrieve those values when they play a game, so you don't have to do a new release. So we can detect in Mixpanel, we detect like every time, a kill was rejected. And we can adjust those thresholds based on what we're seeing there. So if we think, we're being a little too aggressive with a certain threshold, we can modify that.
Just to clarify, the voting, it's the math happening in the background. People aren't actually like
Math happening in the
putting in a vote.
Yep. All it is like, on my server, I noticed a projectile hit a person, and I just tell the server about that. And then the server says, all right, I'll keep a note of that. And if enough conviction is built up about this hit, we'll call it. Cool. A lot of content. Went a little long. We answered a bunch of questions along the way. It is late. I can hang out a little bit if anybody wants to chat and ask for more detail about this, but otherwise, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you for your time.